So for those interested, I thought I would tell this kind of the story of my first ultra marathon, which I ran about 2 weeks ago. I did 50K, which is like 31 miles, about that. And there's just a lot of highs and lows that come with longer distance running. It's what makes me enjoy it, but they are highs and lows nonetheless. So to start, like, I had a little bit of like butterflies before, just the anticipation, like before like a game, like a sporting event or something, like to compete, kind of get those butterflies in your chest of just more a nervous excitement, like an anticipation of like something's kind of about to go down, like there's something about to happen, like a big thing. So I had a little bit of that before. And, it felt pretty good. I had, all my gear. I had like a hydration pack and, water bottle, hydration tablets, stuff like that. And so, all lined up at the finish line. They start sending waves of people out. There's a decent amount of people. I think there was maybe 130 or so. And, so we're off, start going. And immediately, like first half mile, there's a decent hill, and it's kind of like a rolling hill, so like you kind of ascend, be a little bit flat for a while, then ascend even more. For the race total, over the 31 miles, it was 6,000 feet of elevation gain, which is a pretty decent amount for a distance like that. Like it definitely was not flat. Definitely was not flat, which I knew going into it. But, over trails. So first mile, start walking. So like all the uphills for longer distance running, maybe some people run them, but I am not in the physical shape to run the entire way when there's that many hills. So strategy is usually I walk on the uphills and then I run flats and downhill. So walking, feel good. Maybe around mile 2, there's first, I don't want to say river, that's too generous, like a creek crossing that's 15 feet wide, maybe something like that. And, I cannot jump that. So it's pretty much, mud, all along the bank, a good amount. And then, so running water, mud on the other side. So, I already knew it was going to be muddy. My friend had told me that it's muddy and you're going to get your feet wet, nothing you can do about it. So just like whatever, don't preoccupy your mind with this. It's going to happen. So just run through the mud and the water. Already my feet are soaking wet, like it's soaked into my shoes and my socks. I got mud all over. That's like mile 2, but it's not really demoralizing or anything, because it's just like, okay, I still feel good. Like we're out here doing this. It's still like fun, kind of shaking out that nervousness, that excitement. So it doesn't really bother me. And about a mile or less later, there's like another creek crossing. So I don't know if they had us like cross the creek and then just kind of loop around, cross again. But so again, more mud. My feet are already pretty wet. They don't really get much more wet because they already were about as wet as they could get. And it's just like, okay, a couple more hills. So, but I'm still feeling really good. My legs feel good. Everything just feels really on point. Happy, I'm excited, so everything's good. Then about mile 5, we get to, and I kind of see that there's a small descent where you kind of like, get down into like this ravine area. I have to kind of step carefully because it's kind of like a roots and stuff. You have to use the steps and it's fairly steep. And like, okay, like go slow, I'm going slow, kind of getting down in the ravine. And then I start, running after I get down, and it's just like a creek running straight down. And the course is making you run right in this creek. And you can kind of somewhat get off to the side, but the banks are steep enough that you really can't run outside of the mud and the water.
I didn't record this the first lap, but second lap I had to get this about 20 miles in, second loop, and this is part of the course. I don't know how I can see it, but it's a creek / river, and you run straight through it, and as you can see, shoes are pretty wet, pretty muddy. Yeah,
there is flowing water going through. It's not super strong, but there is definitely water moving. The mud was probably, you know, like 4 inches deep in some spots, a little bit more. So like sinking my feet into the mud, running through, you know, running water. At this point now my feet are completely saturated, completely soaked. And I'm just like, well, I don't know what kind of sadistic person decided it would be cool to put the course through a creek, but apparently that's what this is. So I've run through that. It was probably like 1/8 of a mile. So it was long enough. It's just like you're wet, soaked. Like, you know, that's just the way it is. And I was like, okay, now I understand why my friend told me that you're going to get wet feet regardless of what you do. There's just like nothing you can do. But I still feel good. I still feel good. It's just my feet are wet, and it's kind of like, okay, it is what it is. Just keep going. I think I refill my water. Maybe eat like half a peanut butter and jelly at the aid station, which was like mile 7, something like that.
So about 6.5 miles in, and there's like one part where you just run straight through a river. So I'll just insert like a picture of my shoes or something, but you run straight through a river, like maybe 1/8 of a mile, and my shoes are just wrecked. You kind of see them, but very wet feet. That's like in the first 5 miles. And there's some gnarly hills. I'll try to put a clip in soon of the crossing, because they're doing the second loop back through that same area. So yeah, 7 miles. Feel really good. Everything feels pretty loose. Cardio's holding up. Nothing hurts yet. Pain cave is incoming though.
And there's there's one hill in particular, or I should say almost hills, that just really wrecked me. It was very shortly after the part where you run through the creek. And it's this ascent that it's so vertical that as I'm going up, you know, I'm using my hands to help climb. So not in like a cliff vertical pulling myself up, but like as I'm walking up this thing, I can touch the ground in front of me because it's like I'm bent over a little bit. So like it's that steep. I would say it was a slightly more than 45-degree angle. You had to kind of step on like rocks to kind of get a foothold. You can't just walk up it like a normal hill. You have to get like footholds to kind of go up. It definitely was not a trail. It was like kind of a small, very small cliff that they just put the course up through. So then, like, I'm feeling a little tired after this because it's like kind of, you know, it wasn't easy. And right after you get to the top of this kind of steep climb that, I mean, I don't know how steep it was, or like how long it was, but, you know, maybe 30, 40 feet, maybe. Not really good at distance like that, but something maybe 40 feet. So I already feel a little bit tired from this, and it gets to the top, and there's just this like hill that kind of winds around. So like you go up the hill. Oh, cats that show up. You go up the hill and kind of wind to the left and to the right as you move up this hill, and it's very, very steep.
It's a pretty decent climb, relatively. It's about 45 degrees up. Super beautiful. Look at the view. Man, this is nice. The elevation's rough on the hips, but
so at this point, I have like my hands on my knees, and I'm just like trying to like push my knees to get momentum, and I'm kind of bent forward a lot, just like trying to get my momentum going. And I'm walking fairly slowly at this point. This is like mile, I don't know, 7 or something like that, 8 maybe, and really feeling it. But I still feel fresh enough that it's not like wrecking me really hard. And finally get past that and get to a fairly flat area. So, you know, I run that, and the next few miles aren't super bad. There are hills, obviously, and, you know, things to be careful of and traverse, but it really doesn't get bad. You know, you get a few spots of mud. There's a few really long sections of mud that, as people run through them, you know, it makes the mud worse. It like ruts it out. So I kind of do like a little slip and slide walk, Michael Jackson moonwalk forward type shuffle through the mud, trying not to just completely eat it and fall down. And I'm, you know, eventually get to a spot where I'm at maybe mile 12. So I have a tracker on my phone of how far I'm going, so I can get an idea. And I think around mile 13, I want to see how far I am. So I pulled out, I see like, okay, I'm about like 13, you know, 13 and a half or so. So I know I'm getting close to the end of my first loop. So the course is, you run two 15-mile loops. So you run the exact same route twice. And I know I'm close to the end of the first loop. So as I'm running, I kind of hear voices a little bit in the distance. So I know I'm getting close to where all the people are at like the start finish line. So okay, like things are going pretty well, I think. I feel pretty good. I'm almost at the end of my first loop. Like I felt better than I thought I would. And, you know, I was feeling a little bit tired, you know, but it really wasn't too bad. So I, you know, get to the end of my first loop. I have a drop bag there, which is just like a bag with some stuff I don't want to carry with me. I just wanted to have, I wanted to have dry feet. Just for like a little bit, like just a little bit, I wanted to have dry feet. So I had a change of socks in my drop bag. So I stopped, I changed my socks, you know, got my shoes back on. Feet were a little bit wet because, you know, the water from the shoe kind of soaked back into the socks, but not as wet as my other socks were. And I'm like, okay, you know, refill my water. I grabbed 2 Oreos, eat them, start, you know, walking a little bit, let the food settle. Oreos sat a little bit heavy, but I don't know. I just was kind of hungry, and I love Oreos. So it was just like, oh, you know, if this slows me down a little bit, I'm okay with it. It's just kind of worth it. For longer distance running, it actually is really nice to have like treats, like something to look forward to, and then allowing yourself to like reward yourself in some small way for an accomplishment. It just helps with morale. So like having 2 Oreos at the end of my first loop, which is kind of like, okay, you did good. All right, now let's get back out there. So go start jogging. So now I'm just repeating the course, but it's kind of like if you play a video game and you do play the video game, you beat it on like easy mode, and then you do hard mode and you start playing it again. It really is the exact same thing, because now I'm running the exact same course that I did before, but now it's just like on hard mode instead of easy, because I'm already fairly tired and wet. So, you know, first, you know, mile or two, hit that creek crossing again, and you know, I just run through it because there's nothing else you can do. And as I crossed it and then started going, I was like, why did I even change socks? Like, this was honestly like a little stupid. You know, maybe it was worth it for like a morale booster of that 1 mile or so where I had semi-dry socks, but I was just kind of like, it was pointless. I didn't even really need to do that. I just kind of wasted time, but it is what it is. So keep going, you know, a few more creek crossings, feel a little bit wet. I hit the 1/8 of a mile in the creek, run through that, feet absolutely soaked again. And it wasn't that it bothered me per se, but like the second time, it's not quite as fun, because I had already done it once. So I was just like, here we go again, gonna do the whole wet feet thing, you know, whatever. And I was a little tired. So at this point, I'm, you know, at mile 21. I'm about at 21. And this is when I noticed things started getting hard. So I don't want to say like, oh, the other miles were so easy. You know, it wasn't that they were easy. It's just my definition of what was hard in the moment kept going up and up and up. So like, even though mile 15, like completing the first loop, was hard, now, you know, getting to mile 21, you know, these miles were even harder. And after that creek spot, get to that same area again where it's a really steep climb where I can like, you know, touch the ground in front of me as I'm like walking up, like I can rest my hand on it. And I'm just like really sucking. Like I'm really just breathing hard, and I'm not like pushing myself at all. Like I'm not trying to scale up this super quick, and do anything quickly. I'm moving fairly slow, and in fact I would say definitely slow, just like one foot in front of the other, and I am tanked. Like my wind is gone. I'm breathing super heavy. I was like, man, like this is a lot harder than I remembered it being even the first time. You know, I knew it was gonna be harder the second time around, but uh, it, then I had that long hill after that, and I got to the top finally after the long climb, and I just was like walking on a flat because like I could not catch my breath really.
So, have about 11 miles to go or so. And, yeah. I have nothing to say. I'm just a little tired.
So around, I don't remember the exact point. It was maybe around mile 22, something like that. There was an aid station somewhere around mile 22. And, you know, I finally get there. I knew I was close to the aid station. I was looking forward to, like, oh my God, I need water so much. Like, I'm so thirsty. I didn't have much water left. I had to ration it because I've been just drinking so much between the last aid station and this one. So I was low on water, super thirsty. I'm starving. I'm so hungry because all I've been having is calories in the form of liquid or mostly gels, which is like a somewhat solid liquid. So it's just not that filling, but I can't afford to really eat a lot, you know, because it just will mess with my stomach. So I get to this aid station, refill the water. I'm like, so much better. You know, have a second to just, you know, take a breath. And I see like some M&Ms. I'm like, well, I am starving. And M&Ms, it's like four. It's four in this tiny little, you know, container. So like 4 M&Ms, that seems, you know, that's not bad. I could probably do that. So I down the M&Ms. They are delicious, super wonderful. I love them. And then there was this little piece of candy. I don't even really know what kind. It was like a little circular candy with like sugar coating on it, kind of chewy. You know, eat one of those. Still a very small amount. It's like 4 M&Ms. They're big. They're the bigger M&Ms, like the jumbo M&Ms. So you know, there's not like the tiny ones. So 4 of the bigger M&Ms and 1 piece of candy. And then the guy, I had been kind of trailing behind a guy for a while, and he was keeping a pretty good pace around what I wanted. So I just stayed within sight of him for the whole time, like up to this point. And he was at the aid station. He was like, "Oh, do you have electrolyte tablets?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And he just like, you know, takes one. And it's the same company that I use my electrolyte tablets, like that I get my electrolyte tablets from, but they're a different variation of it. I think the one at the aid station was maybe heavier in salt or something like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, I should take them. And I have my own electrolyte tablets. Like I have my own. I don't need to. But for some reason, I don't know if like my brain just like wasn't working correctly or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'll have what he's having. So I took one of the electrolyte tablets, you know, washed it down with some water, and you know, I start walking out of the aid station. So like usually after I eat, I want to let it settle for a second. So it's sitting kind of heavy in my stomach. I'm like, man, I don't really like that. You know, so I'm trying to walk it off a little bit, and I walk, you know, for maybe a minute or so, just see how I feel. I'm like, all right, well, I don't feel great, but I need to start running now. Like it's time to get going. So I start running, and I'm not kidding. It's like 10 seconds at most later. Like I start jogging. And at like that amount of time, I was like, it just hits me like my stomach is destroyed. And immediately I'm like, up, I'm gonna puke. Like I step off to the side of the trail, and like as I step off, I just projectile vomit, assuming just pretty much water, and it just comes spraying out. And I mean, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say projectile. Like, it's spraying out almost like you put your finger over, like almost like you turned a hose on and like crimped it, and then you like put your finger over the top and opens it back up, and it just goes like that. It was a lot like that. I just, projectile spray water, and you do that one time, two times, three times, and then and I have a little pause, and then four times, and then five times, and then I just start dry heaving because I pretty much like it, I surprisingly it could have been mixed in there, but I did not see any M&Ms or candy, so somehow those seemed to like bypass my vomiting. I don't know how, and I think it was just water, and something about eating the solid food just made me puke up the water. I think I would have felt if I would have puked up M&Ms or seen it. It all seemed like clear water for the most part. And so I'm just like dry heaving because now there isn't really much left in my stomach. And the dude that had gotten the electrolyte tablet before me that I've been following for a while, I'd gotten ahead of him because he left a little bit later than me from the aid station. And as I'm just like focused on the ground, just looking at the ground, dry heaving, the guy who like runs past me, he's like, "Take it slow, you'll be okay." And I didn't say a word. There was no thank you, yep, whatever. I couldn't talk. I was just like, oh my, I feel terrible. So then I kind of dry heave a few more times, eyes watering, just a wreck at this point. And like, all right, just start walking. So I start walking, take a tiny sip of water just to kind of clean my mouth out and make me feel a little normal again. And walk for, maybe a minute or two. And I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good. Yeah, I feel pretty good now. Like everything seems okay. Like whatever my body puked up, it seemed to help. So I start running, and like I'm keeping a good pace. Like I feel pretty good. I can, I have a few hills that I'm walking up. Everything actually feels good, and I'm running at a decent pace. I'm like, well, apparently puking is like a performance booster because I feel so much better than I did even before I got to the aid station. That lasts like 20 minutes. And at the end of those 20 minutes, I think because I puked up all the water I had drank like before the aid station, like a little before, during, and any after, I was all of a sudden now really behind on my hydration. So puking all that up, it felt good because I kind of cleared out my stomach. And as soon as that kind of all settled down, then the dehydration started kicking in. And my stomach just felt really messed up, like really like I wanted to puke again. And I tried sipping on some water, and that just made it way worse, like way worser. And I tried, maybe having like a running gel, and that messed with it even more. So like, man, I can't even eat right now. I can barely drink. And so it was kind of the problem. I think the dehydration is what made my stomach upset. But it was kind of this double-sided thing where I couldn't eat or drink because my stomach was messed up because I was dehydrated, but I was dehydrated because I couldn't drink. So it was like this constant cycle. So I finally, I get to mile 25 and my stomach is even more messed up at this point. And this is where I really hit a hard wall where I'm running and I have so little energy. My body hurts everywhere. And I'm just like, I just want this to be over. Like I'm not enjoying this in the slightest. This is not fun for me. I just want it to stop. Like I don't want to do this anymore. And it wasn't even really that I wanted to quit. I just wanted it to be over. I just was dehydrated and everything hurt, and I was tired and hungry and not hungry at the same time. And it just was like, man, I'm done with this. Like I just want to get to the finish line and just whatever. And I have a 50 miler planned in September. And as I was running, around mile 25, 26, I was like, I think I'm just going to cancel the 50 miler because I don't think I have it in me to do this. I don't think I have it in me to be an ultra runner. I don't think I'm built like these other people that run ultras. Like I don't think I'm as strong as they are. Like I don't think I'm made for this. Like maybe I should just, after this race, I'm just gonna cancel my 50 miler and you know, just, I don't know, run for fun or something like that, you know, because I'm just not cut out for this. This sucks. And I was just kind of stuck in a loop of that thought for miles. And it didn't help that, you know, I would start running and my stomach would feel real messed up, and then I would get to the point where I like felt like I was about to puke, and then I would start walking, and I would let all those feelings kind of settle down a little bit. And once I felt fairly okay, I would start running again, and then however long I would feel like I was going to puke again, and I just repeated that run walk process for you know, miles and miles. So I had that started around mile 25, so I had like 6 miles left. And at this point, I looked at my tracker, and you know, I was doing like 17, 18-minute miles for some of them, which like is just a walking pace. Like there were points I was walking so slow that even though I would mix in some running, I ended up just keeping a walking pace. Like I almost could have just walked for the last 6 miles. If I would have pushed it, I could have gone that same pace if I just would be walking normally, you know. So it was not fast by any stretch of the imagination. And going up hills was exceptionally difficult at this point. I think I let my posture get a little sloppy because my back, like the pain in my hips and my legs, I didn't even notice as much because my back was hurting so bad from, I think, carrying the hydration pack, which starts to feel a little bit heavy at a certain point. And because as I'm going up hills, I'm like hunching forward, just not even conscious of my posture because I was just so tired. And I'm letting my whole body kind of collapse in. And my upper back and neck were hurting so much that I didn't even think about all the pain in my feet and my hips. So I'm just, you know, kind of in this negative mindset of just like, I don't even know how many times I said to myself, I just want this to be over between mile 25 and 31, but it was a lot. It was a lot of, I just want this to be over. I just want this to be over. And, you know, after like mile 26 or 25 or something like that, like you really can't quit, even if I wanted to. Like I didn't have any intention of quitting, but it actually helped me mentally that you really can't quit because there's nowhere to quit. You have to either walk back to the other aid station or walk to the finish line. So like either way, you're going, you know, a fairly good distance. So like mentally, it almost allowed me a chance to focus more because I was like, I know I'm not going to quit. I know I have to finish. So like, let's just do it. Let's just do it. So I do a lot of walking. I do some running, and get towards the end, I kind of hear some distant voices, and then I get to this part in the trail that like has tons and tons of leaves and is kind of flat. And I remembered from the first lap that means the finish line is really close. And you know, this is the power of the mind, that when I realized that the finish line was close, I started running. Now granted, I was probably only quarter mile or maybe a half mile away from the finish line. There was a lot of woods, so you couldn't really see it, but I knew it was close, so I started running. And before, like I wasn't even running half mile pretty much. I would maybe run a quarter mile at most, and then start walking for a little bit and run a quarter mile. So, and then I ran like a half mile at like a decent pace. It wasn't a fast pace like the start of the race, but it was a decent pace. And I ran, saw the finish line, last little hill, crossed the finish line. You know, the race director gives me like the medal or whatever, and I just go cross, kind of get out of the way, and I just lay down in the dirt, and I'm just like, I just have to take a second. And I'm just sitting there, like not even really knowing like what to think or what to feel. I'm just like complete tired, but I'm like the level of relief I felt from not having to go more was tremendous. It was wonderful. I was just like, I'm done. It is over now. And, you know, then I realized that in order to, like the race line, the start line was about a quarter mile away from the parking lot. I was like, I have to walk to my car now. And I feel like this was just like a sick joke. The quarter-mile walk to the parking lot is all a fairly steep hill that you walk down to get to the race, to get to the start line. When you feel good, you just walk down that hill real easy. And then you have to walk up at the very end of the race, which I feel like was some type of sadistic, intentional thing. So I'm just like plodding up the hill, I feel not terrible, but like everything hurts and I'm muddy and wet and so tired and I just want to be home. And I'm walking up this hill and a vehicle comes up. So like there aren't supposed to be vehicles down there. So I don't know why this vehicle was like down in a spot where there aren't supposed to be vehicles. But the vehicle comes driving up the hill and a guy like, you know, kind of slows down, rolls his window down. He's like, hey, you want to ride up? I was like, yes, I would love a ride up. Thank you. Like I get in his vehicle. I was just like, thank you so much. I'm so tired. Thank you so much. And he was like, yeah, someone, you know, gave me a ride one time after my race to my vehicle, and I just wanted to pass the favor along, which I thought was really cool. And kind of, to me at least, it spoke to like people in the running community are very cool, like very cool people. That's part of the reason I enjoy it. And I don't know, it was like a really nice gesture that actually meant a lot to me in that moment of just like, oh, like this guy stopped and thought like this, I don't know, this guy empathized, was like, I know what that feels like. And he stopped and gave me a ride. Like it legitimately like touched me. It really, I don't know, I'm really thankful for that. It was a very cool experience. And you know, I get to my car and just so tired, and so exhausted. Sit in my car for a second, drank some water. My girlfriend called me because I had texted her that I was done, and then she called me right away. And so like I'm kind of talking to her, and like, you know, she's talking, and like I can understand the words that she's saying, but like my mind cannot focus enough to form a response. I'm just like sitting there as she's talking, and just like I can maybe say like yeah in like a few words, but I can't, like I almost can't formulate sentences. And so finally she was like kind of talking. I was like, I had to interrupt her, and I was like, I'm sorry, like I literally can't have a conversation right now. Like I can't process you talking and then understanding what you're saying, and then figuring out what I'm gonna say, and then speaking. Like it's just too, like I need silence. So like she's like, okay, cool. So I, you know, drive home just in silence for the most part. Like I just needed to soak in the experience. And within, I would say about 10 minutes after I left, I was like driving, and I'm remembering the part at like 25, 26, 27 miles that I was just like, I want this to be over. I'm going to cancel that 50 miler. I'm not cut out for ultra running. This isn't for me. I'm not built for it. And I thought about that, and like I almost couldn't help but smile, because I was like, yeah, I'm running that 50 miler for sure. So that's the end of the story. And I will, I guess, make another update September 5th, probably after I do my first 50 miler.